Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Kṛṣṇa Padan Sahaganamate Clarita Shibishakam Vitamishta Mantra Guru Chotashiko Guru Gandha Charane Yagi Kori Abandon Vanchaka Patri Vishchaka Vashendra Vichapoditina Babane Baboishnava Goni Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutala Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Sarvashwati Deve Gaudamai Pracharne Hidyan Visheshashan Bhari Krishna Deshtane Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. We heard how in Ramkeli Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had gone there. Actually, his plan was to go to Vrindavan, but Mahaprabhu actually was conceiving of taking the devotees from Bengal with him, taking them through, as he traveled through Bengal, as we heard, that so many devotees were joining Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan, as he was, even from the time he left Jagannath Puri, and Garadha Pandit, he was joining Mahaprabhu at that time. It was his appearance day, a couple of days ago, and how Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami describes Gaurchandra Pandit fainting, falling on the ground, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu finally, at Katha, finally denied him to continue any further and demanded that he return to Jagannath Puri to carry on with the Sheba of Gopinath, as he had taken the Kshetra sannyas. So many devotees were following Mahaprabhu. By the time he reached Panihati, and as he traveled through Vidyanagar, and we heard that extensively, as described by Srila Vrindavan Thakur, all of the residents of Navadip, particularly the atheists and the materialists and the karmakandis, the smartas, the Brahmins, they had not taken advantage of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy whilst he was performing the Sankirtan pastimes in Navadip. And having taken sannyas, actually one of the reasons why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, Tobe more deke she dharibe charan e morte udharibo shakal bhubhan. Tobe more deke was seeing me, though such classes of the society, the smarters and the atheists and the scholars and the materialists, they didn't take advantage of Gaurchandra whilst he was performing Sankirtan Leela in Navadip Dham. And we often hear that they're actually critical. You know, we can't get a good rest at night. We used to hear the beating of drums for the worship of Ma Durga annually, once or twice for a week, but this every night, this banging of drums and the singing, and this is something, this is not at all enjoined in the Vedic scriptures. And the holy name of the Lord, that can be mumbled silently when you're taking Ganga Snan, but this loud noise, and what are they doing? So they came under a lot of criticism. Actually, it should be studied in great detail, the descriptions in the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. Just as this evening, I was just hearing over a section that we're going to hear from this evening of chapter 19 of Madhya Lila Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I was thinking, wow, this whole chapter in itself is like a whole PhD study. This whole chapter. Rūpa Gosvāmī, how they met in Bengal. We'll carry on with so I was thinking, this take a whole life just to study this one chapter. So absorb Sri Gaura Modhu Lila Jarkone Prabhashila Rito Nirmal Balatar. Vrindavan Das Thakur explains, and also Kaviraj Goswami explains Sri Chaitanya Doya Koraho Bicha Kore Chitte Babe Chamatkar. That Bicha Kore Sri Chaitanya Doya, the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bicha Kore. Just try to analyze that. Just try to absorb your mind in conceiving that, understanding that, hearing that, and remembering these pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Doya, the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because being in Mayapur Dham, everything is so merciful here. So amazing. You can just go to if you want a complete surcharge of spiritual energy, you can just go to the temple and stand there in front of Lord Nrsimhadev during his arti. Late at night, there's few people there, or even in the noontime. In the noontime, there's a way, you can stand there, see the whole arti. That's a very powerful thing. Just that is enough to deliver you. So easy to be Krishna conscious in Mayapur. So easy. And especially if you live here trying to be Krishna conscious. So Mahaprabhu, where were we? So many people were joining him as he was coming. From Vidyanagar, at Vidyanagar they came, these classes. They came. And then Mahaprabhu, he delivered the offenders, Devananda Pandit and Gopal Chapal, all of those descriptions are there in earlier places, how these persons were offenders. And Mahaprabhu is now carrying on, and he at Ramkelli, Sanatana Goswami, we heard last week, Sanatana Goswami, he advised Gauranga, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that it's not appropriate to go to Vrindavan with such a huge crowd of people. Vrindavan, Nirjan, Ekjan, Jabe, Ekjan, Mahaprabhu explained it, yeah, remember that. Eka Jabo Ba Duijan, I will go either alone, that solitary place of Vrindavan, I will go there either alone or with one person. And Mahaprabhu returned at Karnanadashala, he was thinking, yes, it was very, very, very good what Sanatana said. Krishna spoke to me through Sanatana Goswami's words. And even as Krishna gave me a good lesson through the Sanatana Goswami's words. So then Mahaprabhu, he returned, he was saying, this is not the right way to go to Vrindavan. People will think that I'm a showman, and Prabhupada comments that it's not good to take a large number of people to the Holy Dham to extract funds from them by showing them the places of pilgrimage. Of course, one can take jatras to a Holy Dham, but it shouldn't be for financial profit. It's an important point we can see from Mahaprabhu deciding to return and go back to Jagannath Puri. So he went back to Jagannath Puri again, he came through Gaudadesh. And at that time, Raghunath Das Goswami took the association of Gauranga and Shantipur. And then again in Panihati, Raghav Bhavan, so those pastimes, there's very special places, Panihati and Shantipur. Next time you come to Mayapur, certainly we have to go to Shantipur. Such a special place. So then Mahaprabhu, he went through the forest and delivered the tigers. That in itself is a whole encyclopedic study. Mahaprabhu's travels through Jharkhand and preaching to the tigers, the significance of that. Just see every chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita you can absorb yourself in for a lifetime. Mahaprabhu's, what to speak of the South Indian tour, what to speak of the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita. So they all came. Then Mahaprabhu, he decided he went through the forest of Jharkhand, and the deers and the bears and the lions, they're all embracing and kissing and chanting the holy name and rolling on the ground in ecstasy. What a description! What a glorious description of the potency of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Otulaniya Shakti, incomparable. How is God? Who can do such a thing? But it's described in the pages of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, such glorious poetry describing the Bhagavata of Gauranga Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Bhagavata, his potency, his godliness is the absolute truth. So actually, while he was going through the forest, he was enjoying it. In the morning, he would light a fire, and in the evening, from the forest, the wood abundantly available in the forest. And to warm himself, it was all cool. When was that? It was, I can't remember what month he left, but yeah, maybe in the evening, maybe it was cold. Yeah, I think it was cold. So he had a little fire in the evening and in the morning, and he took bath in the rivers and in the waterfalls. And Balabhadra Bhattacharya had rice, he had carrying a bag, and then they would collect the shark, the leaves, and he would cook them in a pot with a fire. Just imagine. lying down and enjoying and sleeping under the stars and eating that freshly cooked forest leaves with the rice and some spices and dal. And Mahaprabhu, he said, just see, he said, Kṛṣṇa, you know, how merciful he is, that I'm enjoying so much here, alone in the forest. This is what's so wonderful. Actually, I wouldn't have done this, but Kṛṣṇa, he put on the whole scene there in Ramkeli, that there's so many tens of thousands of people that gathered to see me that Sanatana Goswami, he just couldn't believe, you know, hey, reality check, look at this crowd, you know, you're taking half of India with you. And then I realized, yeah, of course, I was so absorbed in the holy name and the Nam Sankirtan, and I never realized how huge the crowd was and what a issue that was, both for creating it, just like we managed to smooth past cruise past the Nawab, but you know, who knows what's going to happen? The crowd is just getting bigger and bigger. And I'm not even thinking about it. He wasn't into logistics. Gauranga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, completely absorbed in Nam Sankirtan, Prema Vesh, the Rosh, Pote Prema Veshe, Hove Ocheton, A Shabshamagri, A Kori Rokamabhu, full down unconscious. He didn't care about how many people were there. And then Sanatan said, come on, you know, you ought to go to Vrindavan like this. They would never have seen such a crowd. Vrindavan 500 years ago. You'll create such disturbance. So then Mahaprabhu said, Kṛṣṇa, he arranged all that through the mouth of Sanatan, so that I could get this chance to come through the forest. So in different ways, Mahaprabhu, that same incident, he describes it from different angles. He's saying that it plays three or four different roles. First of all, he said that Gauda Deshe Mor Dui Shamastra Janani Janavi Dui Doyamoy. He traveled all through Gauda Desh on the banks of Ganga, and he was enjoying so much association with Ma Ganga. And in Shantipur, again, Sachimata came. I'm not sure about Bidanagar, but in Shantipur, Sachimata again came and was able to associate with Nimai. She even said that maybe he will come on occasion to bathe in the Ganga, and he did. So for that reason, that was enough. Bathe in the Ganga and see Sachimata. Dui Doyamoy. So that was enough for him. That was the reason why he went. And then he also said he wanted to take all the Bengali devotees with him to Vrindavan. How much Ananda that would be. He was, in other words, Gauranga, he was missing the association of the Navadip Sankirtan Bhaktara. He was missing their association because he had such intimate pastimes. All night, they gave up sleeping. They were so much enjoying the Sankirtan Rosh here in Navadip Dham. What a place. It doesn't matter what else happens here. Just Srivas Angan, just being nearby that. I'm pretty close. Mahaprabhu just enjoyed the Sankirtan with his devotees, a full absorption, and occasionally Udila Orduna Purababage Dichamani Goda Amani Chage Dichamani. He would wake up from sleep and Bhakata Shamohalaya Shate. Bhakata Shamohalaya, taking all the devotees, getting them along with him. Shate Gelo Nagara Braje, Gelo Nagara Braje. He would go to the towns and the villages. Tatai Bajala Ko Mridanga. Gana Gana Tahi Jajira, Preme Dala Dala. Shonera Anga, Preme Dala Dala. His out of love of God, Preme Dala Dala, Shonera Anga, his golden limbs are quivering with love of God. Shodane Nu Puraba, and around his ankles, around his feet, the ankle bells are chiming as he's Mukunda Madhava Yadava. Bolena Bolode Bodana Bodis. He's going through the villages and doing Sankirtan in the morning. Yeah, that's the time to do Nam Sankirtan. Yeah, if you had enough land, who are we discussing with? But if you now there's land available in those places, Rudra Deep and Simanta Deep, and on the other side of the Ganga, you can buy a huge amount of land there and build a whole community. Otherwise, where are people going to stay? Even Mayapur is very expensive. You go there, buy land, it's all cheap. And on the bank of the Ganga. And you can just, you could arrange it definitely in the holy dham, so whatever you desire can be fulfilled, especially if it's Mahaprabhu's desire and Prabhupada's desire, as it was. One of the devotees to just live from the, self-sufficient, grow your own food, have enough land, it's possible. Bengal. Grow your own rice, grow your own vegetables, have it all walled off with security. Time will come when you regret that we didn't do that. And we can create such an environment in the morning time in the Borab Halai, Udilo Oruna, Purababhage. Purababhage in the Purababhage in the eastern side. Udilo Oruna, the reddish sun has just arisen. In Mayapur, you still see that reddish sun arise in the morning. Udilo Oruna, Purababhage, Dichamani Goda Amani Jage, Mahaprabhu Dichamani, the Kṛṣṇa of the Navadip Brahmins, he awakens at that time. Vakata Shamohalaye Shate. Gelo Nogara Bra Ajay takes the devotees and goes out in the villages. So how much affection? It's not just because they're Bengali, I'm Bengali, no, because of these pastimes that so sweet, Navadip Dham, performing Sankirtan village to village and converting all the Navadip Basis who are all these eternal associates anyway. How could they not have been to be able to sing the Vidyalila on the banks of the Ganga, disturbing the Brahmins, disturbing the Komaris? Where do they all go? They're all part of the society. They all know it, Nimai. They all saw his Vidyalila, Digbijay, defeating all the scholars on the banks of the Ghats. And in this way, Vishnupriya Vivaha, marrying Vishnupriya, Lokipriya. So in this way, he was already, the Navadip Basis, they saw so much Lila, they're eternal associates. How could it not be? Seeing all these pastimes. And they're oftentimes mentioned. So Mahaprabhu had so much affection. Jagannath Puri also so many special devotees there, but many of the Navadip Basis came. We heard that. Haridas Thakur, Nityananda Prabhu, although not all the time. Nityananda Age Dilo Jao go to Deshe. Nityananda Age Dilo. Mahaprabhu, he ordered Nityananda. Nityananda Age Dilo. Jao go to Deshe. Go to Bengal. He ordered Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda, Agya Dilo, Jao go to Deshe. I order you to go to Bengal, Onagal Prem Bhakti Koraho Prakashe. And there, Onagal, without any limit, Prem Bhakti Koraho Prakashe, you distribute love of Godhead. I order you to go there. So Nityananda Prabhu, he was specially ordered to preach in Bengal. Go to Desh, go Mandal Bhumi. And therefore the place is so special. And therefore, anyone who preaches actually in Gaur Mandal Bhumi, of course, Mahaprabhu gave Nityananda Prabhu the order, preaching Gaur Desh. That's a special order. I mean, Nityananda Prabhu going through Parampara, preaching Gaur Desh, special order. Yeah, that's good, Kripa. So had such affection Mahaprabhu had for the Gauda Bhaktagan, such affection. In kirtan in the morning at the dawn, and then all night. Maybe they'd just do that after they'd finish all night. Have Mangaladi, and then they'd just going home and they'd just wander around the villages for a while before coming back, take bath in the Ganga, do puja, take breakfast, and take a rest. What a life. Stay up all night doing kirtan. In the morning, go out in the villages as the sun's rising, a bit of preaching, go take Ganga Snan, come back home, do puja, take prasad. You could do that if you had a huge amount of land there. Wouldn't have to have scooters, you wouldn't have to have auto rickshaws, you wouldn't have to have anybody coming in. It'd be so easy for us to create a whole village where it could just be like it was like in Mayapur 500 years ago. It's possible. If you have enough land, just be able to get far enough away from the outside world. So Mahaprabhu went through the forest and Jharkhand was so special. And then he went to Vrindavan. On the way, he went to Varanasi and then Tapamishra, and that's so beautiful, Tapamishra. He'd been away for 15, he'd ordered him from Bangladesh. He was there, Rajshahi, on the banks of the Podda Nadi. And Mahaprabhu went to Keturi and deposited prema for Narottam. So not that time exactly, but anyway, in the same place, Mahaprabhu met with Tapamishra. And then he inquired, Shadda, what's the goal of life? Shadon Shadda, how to achieve it? And he said, you 15 years later in Varanasi, I'm going to explain that in full to Sanatana Goswami. So you'll be there. So you'll go there now. Just make sure that you're there now. So Tapamishra was there. Mahaprabhu went to Varanasi. He asked him, Sadhan Sadhan. Mahaprabhu said briefly, but I'll tell you briefly. He said that, I'm telling you, Shlok Nam Bali Lai Mahamantra. I'm giving you this Mahamantra. Shlok Nam Bali Lai. I'm taking this and I'm giving it to you by my own lips. Mahamantra. Vaitrashaka Shalanam, 16 names, 32 syllables, 8 tantra. This is the process I'm giving. That's all you need to know. And there you go to, and he quoted a few verses. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Epakam Kalonashtevan, like that. Nata Paratrapaya, Shalubedish, Drishyate, Iti Sodashagam Nam Nam Kali Kalmashanashanam, to destroying the dirt of Kali Yuga. You cannot find a better process than these 16 names from the Upanishads, Kali Shantarana Upanishads. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Prabhupada recorded a few verses, but that was it very briefly. And then he said, you go to Varanasi. And then Mahaprabhu, he'd just been married to Lucky Priya. So at least 4 years later, he took sannyas, and then 2 years South Indian and 2 years in Puri. So that's 8 years. 8 years, at least 8 years. 8 to 9 years later, he's going through Varanasi. And now, maybe it's even more, I think. But anyway, it's definitely around that 10 years or more. And now Mahaprabhu, he's going through Jharkhand, he goes to Varanasi. And then to Prayag, and then to Vrindavan. And he comes back, he doesn't stay in Vrindavan long. Now, discussing Mahaprabhu's actual visit to Vrindavan, that in itself is something that, we're just, that in itself you could spend a lifetime on. Mahaprabhu's visit to Sri Vrindavan Dham. There's one chapter, but sometime in Vrindavan it could be discussed. The Bengali, read the Bengali, the whole chapter. Krishna, who wrote it in Vrindavan. This Kṛṣṇa Das Kaviraj Goswami, he wrote Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he wrote it in Vrindavan. But he cannot remain as described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But Mahaprabhu cannot remain very long in Vrindavan. It mentions that when he entered the road to Mathura, he entered the district of Mathura, his prema, in Pramavesh, the love of Godhead, which has ended in him and taken him over, it increased 1,000 times. And then when he entered Brajabhumi, Vrindavan Dham, and increased 10,000 times. 10,000 times. Maybe it's even more, maybe 100,000. Could you imagine? Vrindavan was just so intense. So if you're reading those of Mahaprabhu's in heightened, ecstasy, Krishna Prema, Radha Prema, Mahabhakti in Vrindavan, 100,000 times more than what he was experiencing on the South Indian tour, what he was experiencing on the road to Gaudadesh, as he was going through Gaudadesh. Just imagine such a thing. So that's something that could be discussed in great detail on the appropriate occasion. The Mahaprabhu's visit to Sri Vrindavan Dham. Now he's actually left Vrindavan and he's again coming back. He only stayed in Vrindavan 2 weeks. It seems to be the conclusion of the Gaudiya Acharyas. Srinatha Shastri Thakur, he very briefly visited Vrindavan Dham. His headquarters were in Kolkata. You can visit the place, his main headquarters, yes. Where it's such an important place. When most of the Gaudiya Math preaching happened, which was for 14 years or 12 years, from 1920 to 1932, he established 64 temples all over India. They're big temples. He didn't do he just the big temples. He's got so many centers, restaurants, yoga centers. We're expanding all over the place. Can't stop. He's gone. But he just opened temples. And that's it. And had brahmacharis living in temples. But he did that in 64 different cities in India. And where he was based at that time was this one little room in Kolkata. And you can go to that room and you can sit there and chant. Such a special place. And a friend of mine, Alanga Mohan Prabhu, such a beautiful devotee, such a transcendental devotee. He's the chief master of ceremonies of Ratha Jatra Anushthan, and chief head pujari. He's a young man, Bengali. His mother passed away. His father's initiated his whole life. He was initiated by Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he took second initiation from Bhakti Charushami Maharaj. So just see his position. His only shelter is the service of the Lord and the instructions of such great souls. And Ananga Mohan, yeah. How do we get up to him? Of course, he's Bengali. We speak in Bengali to him, Ananga Mohan. How do we get on to him. Mathiyatra Kolkata. Can't remember. So anyway, Mahaprabhu was in Vrindavan, but he didn't stay. Oh yeah, yes. So this Ananga Mohan, I first saw him, he was a student coming on the bus to Mayapur. We sat on the bus together. He told me he was initiated by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He was a student. He started preaching, and then he's such a swan-like divine personality he's become. And so he was responsible for getting this place, being both for acquiring this place, this Bhaktisiddhanta Shastri Thakur's Altadanga Road headquarters is acquired by ISKCON. And maybe I just want to send this link to somebody because they're online. So bear with me for a moment. Just see what you can do these days, communicate with people in such a way. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Tapa Mishra, Mahaprabhu went through Varanasi, didn't stay in, there's Altadanga Road, yeah. Go to Altadanga Road, and Prabhupada, that's the place where Prabhupada first met Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Can you believe how important that place is? Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur lived there for 12 years, a small room. All of the Gaudiya Math preaching was done at that time. At that time also, Prabhupada first visited and met him. And then they didn't meet again. But the next time they met, Prabhupada had already opened up his pharmacy in Prayag, and then he'd heard the preachers had come and helped them with their temple. They were opening their temple. He heard Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was taking thousands and thousands of devotees on Braja Mondo Parikrama. And Prabhupada went and met him there. And it's the second time they met. That was in 1932. That was almost 10 years later, or 9 years after the first meeting in Altadanga. But anyway, we'll go to that place, that special place. Every time you go to Kolkata, you should visit that place, Altadanga Road. So important. Even spend time there, do Chant Japa there. Yeah. Such an important place to get purified. A holy Tirthasthan, very special to be living so close to such a place. Where people will come all over the world to visit. I could every time I go to Kolkata, my taxi, I could request them to go and spend some time there. Even spend the night there. They already invited me next morning, Chant Japa and preach. We were there for the opening. What did we read from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita? And we said Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at this place at that time, he predicted that foreigners would learn Bengali to read the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So on this day, I am standing here to testify to you the words of the great Acharya. And I read some words from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So just to go there and have a glass and read Chaitanya Charitamrita, what a special experience is that. So anyway, they didn't stay very long. So they in Vrindavan. That was the second. That Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he stayed in Kolkata, and then he visited Vrindavan only for preaching. He didn't stay there and do bhajan. Just see, he could have. Why not? He could have gone to the place where most intense for his bhajan, but he stayed. But it's not so easy for preaching there. Or he didn't want to set the example for preachers because preaching is higher. Doing welfare work for others. He didn't want to set the example because so many would have followed. He remained in Kolkata for preaching. So anyway, on one occasion he was there with his disciples at a huge parikrama, and that was the second time. And Prabhupada met, and Prabhupada listened, and they said, one sannyasi said, we're going to see the darshan of Vishnu temple. And Prabhupada said, what will I see there? Let me hear from Guru Maharaj. And Prabhupada sat and he spoke for 3 hours. And Prabhupada describes that one lecture, how it just caved in whatever illusion he had in his mind, and he completely liberated his consciousness. And literally, Prabhupada's explaining that one lecture, because he doesn't hear, he hears one lecture. It's not like us, we get such regular association. He hears one lecture, but you can describe Prabhupada saying how it just it just peeled away all the illusion that was in his mind, and it never came back again. That's how much that one lecture affected him. And then sometime later, he went for initiation. A few months later, they were opening the Prayag pharmacy. It describes, he heard the lecture, and then the next morning he stood there, and the Thakur got into the taxi and drove off for a preaching engagement. And then Prabhupada, he left the Parikrama, but he heard that one lecture. The Prabhupada said that just completely destroyed any illusion that was in his mind and intelligence, and it never came back. He was so much, by that time, Prabhupada was 1930, so, he began his Krishna consciousness. He got initiation after that. Yeah, he took the next step. He took initiation. What an important step. And then when they were Tulananda, the temple president in Prayag, he referred to Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada. Sanatana Saraswati Thakur commented that I have marked him. He likes to hear. Prabhupada cherished that praise of his guru so much. And thus Srila Prabhupada emphasized the importance of hearing so much, devoutly hearing from the lips of the spiritual master. Therefore, Prabhupada wrote the books to make that available for so many of us to read his books. I'm doing that this evening, actually. This is just the introduction, a recap. So now Mahaprabhu, he didn't remain in Vrindavan long time. And he's brought out of Vrindavan by Balabhadra Bhattacharya, and now he comes to Prayag. Now, what had happened after the meeting of Rūpa Gosvāmī and Sanatana Goswami and Ram Kelly? We just heard that. That was the previous session we heard. In the middle of the night, they went there. The humility, Mahaprabhu's heart, he initiated them. Aj hoite tomanam rup shanaton dhaina charatoma dhanna fete mon. That today I'm initiating you. Why did he put that in the one sentence, in the one verse? Aj hoite tomanam rup shanaton dhanna charatoma fete mon dhanna charatoma dhanna fete mon. You're breaking my mind. Stop this humility. Okay, I'm initiating you. But they never stopped the humility. Nicha jati, nicha shangi, apotit odhom, kubishai kupe, goinu janom. I wasted my life. Goinu janom, my life, it just was uselessly wasted in the what is it? The nicha jati, nicha shangi, potit odhom, kubishai kupe, in the kubishai kupe, in the well of sense enjoyment. This is how Sanatana Goswami introduced himself to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in that first visit in Ramkelli. Nicha Jati. We're so low by birth, Nicha Shangi, and we're associating, our association is low. Potit Odhom. We are sinful, we are the lowest of humanity. Kubishai Kupe, in the well of sense enjoyment. Kubishai Kupe, Goinanu Janam. This life has just been wasted in sense enjoyment. They came with straw in their teeth. And then 6 weeks later, Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri, before going on the forest tour, before leaving again, he's explaining to Gadadhara Pandit, he's describing about the humility of Rupa and Sanatana, that they attracted me, they've conquered me. They're so qualified in their strength, in their academics, in their experience, in their wisdom, in their intelligence, in their skill. They're so qualified, but they consider themselves so low, so unqualified. That just, that their humility is just dinohina. What is that? That the humility of the six Goswamis, that nidra haravahara kaji vijito. Nidra haravahara kaji vijito. Even though nidra aha is sleeping and eating, nidra vihara kari, and enjoyment, etc. Vijito, they completely lost interest in. No, spent no time doing it. They completely lost interest in it. Sat vijito atyanta dino, but they were atanta. They were extremely, to the ultimate limit. Atanta dino, humble. Buddha dina ganesha kurunaya kupina kompasrito. And therefore they became Buddha dina ganeshaya kurunaya, out of mercy for the low, fallen, Kopina Kontasrito. Kopina Kontasrito, they accepted the loincloths of mendicant to give mercy upon the lowest classes. This is the humility and the mercy of the H.I. Goshai. Those who glorify them, those who offer prayers to their Lord's feet. Their obstacles are removed and their spiritual desires are fulfilled. So Rupa and Sanatan, that was their meeting with Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu advised them to return to their occupation, and very quickly Krishna will deliver them. And then Sanatana Goswami even gave this advice that don't go to Vrindavan. It's not the appropriate way to go to Vrindavan. So then they went back to their offices and their home in Ramkelli. And quickly, Rūpa Gosvāmī was able to extricate himself from the entanglement there. And that's described in the beginning of this chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhva Lila, chapter 19, how he divided his wealth, half to the Brahmins, and he kept half for emergency, and he get half for the family members. And then the half he kept it with the grocer, and ultimately that was given to Sanatana Goswami because he had no more money. He had to use that to get out of jail. So in this way, Rūpa Gosvāmī, he took a younger brother, Anupam, but because Sanatana Goswami, because he was occupied so much with the government, he was unable to get relief. So then he thought that, well, the government, the Nawab, he likes me so much, so let me act in such a way that he doesn't like me. He gets angry with me. It'll be easier to leave, for him to do without me. So he put in for sick leave. And then we're at home with 20 or 30 Brahmins. He was sitting and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. We can discuss this in full on another occasion. Perhaps recorded there, glorious Sanatana Goswami appearance day, this incident. 20 or 30 Brahmins, he's there, and the Nawab comes, they all stand up, and then Nawab says, "You're not sick at all, you're defying my order." Sanatana Goswami replies that you're going to give trouble to the servant of Lord Jagannath and Oriya. I'm not going to assist you, I'm no longer available, and put him in jail. So then the Nawab, he went on the campaign against the King Prataparudra, or his father, I think. Yeah, I think it was his father. Not sure, but yeah, maybe his father. And because he was a great hero, I know that. Then anyway, Taparmishra was there. Mahaprabhu came to Varanasi. Didn't stay long. Prayag came back. Now he's meeting. Let's get on to this point here. Then, Rūpa Gosvāmī, he quickly escaped. Sanatana Goswami was in jail. Used that money that's described in Deliverance of Sanatana Goswami. You can see that online in full. So now we're hearing that Rūpa Gosvāmī, he's thinking that in fact, he sent Brahmins to Jagannath Puri to get information on what Mahaprabhu's actual plans were, because they heard that Mahaprabhu turned back. And again, Ramkelli, Mahaprabhu went back to Jagannath Puri. So Rūpa Gosvāmī sent 2 Brahmins to get news when Mahaprabhu was actually going to go to Vrindavan. And then those Brahmins had returned and said he's already left, and he went through the forest of Jharkhand. So then Rūpa Gosvāmī, he collected everything, divided it, and left with his younger brother, Anupam. And Sanatana Goswami couldn't do that. He was in jail. Rūpa Gosvāmī left him the money. Now Rūpa Gosvāmī is thinking that Mahaprabhu is going to Vrindavan, he'll stay there. And we'll be with him in Vrindavan. Yeah, because Mahaprabhu never said that he'll go to Vrindavan and come back. Well, he kind of said that, but, you may just go there and stay there. Vrindavan's then not what it's like now. Mahaprabhu could spend so much time there developing everything and the spirituality of the place. Even he spent a short time there, but the Goswami's presence there developed the spirituality because it had been forgotten even by the local residents. So it is, the spiritual energy is there all throughout the Dham, but it's the hearing and chanting and the establishment of the worship of the Lord that actually re-establishes it. This Vrindavan, so many temples. and so many holy sites and so much bhajan. So that similarly has to be done in Navadip. So many devotees living here, that they intense bhajan, and create that atmosphere so much. So Vrindavan, the Goswamis, they contributed so much to that spiritual atmosphere. H.I. Goshai Jabe Braja Koila Bash Radha Krishna Nitto Lela Karela Prakash. This is their direct order that given by Gaurchandra. H.I. Goshai Jabe Braja Koila Bash. You go to Vrindavan and you Braja Koila Bash. You stay there, written that Radha Krishna Nitto Lela Karela Prakash. Radha Krishna Nitto Lela. The transcendental pastimes of Radha Krishna, Karela Prakash. You write the books and you build the temples. And in this way, they established the transcendental atmosphere in Vrindavan through their literature and through the worship that's going on there. Although the main temples of Vrindavan, they are the temples of the Goswamis, Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Govindaji, and Radha Damodar, Radha Gopala Ananda, and Radha Madan Mohan. These are the main temples of Vrindavan, and Radha Vinod, and Radha Sanat Goswami. So these temples, that's the spirit. They're the main temples of Vrindavan, established by the Goswamis. They established the spiritual authenticity of Vrindavan Dham. The Goswamis established it by their work, by their establishing their temples, and by their literature. It's a fact. The Goswamis established Vrindavan Dham. That's why it's so special for us. It's established by Mahaprabhu, Vrindavan. So Rūpa Gosvāmī, he's going and he's thinking we'll all be in Vrindavan. And Mahaprabhu couldn't stay there by Balabhadra Bhattacharya. Mahaprabhu couldn't even decide whether, he didn't even know where he was. That's another discussion. They brought him out of Vrindavan, Balabhadra Bhattacharya. They brought him out of Vrindavan and back on the Ganga, and he's coming down to Prayag. Now, this is the description where we're beginning this evening. That Rupa and Anupam, they've come to Prayag. Prayag is a special place because of this incident, and subsequently Mahaprabhu stays here and he instructs Rūpa Gosvāmī, Rupa Shikha, so important, this chapter 19, Madhya Lila. We will examine it. This has been a warm-up to Rupa Shikha. I think we're ready for it now. If you're carrying on after what's going on over the last few years, a few months here. So he's coming into Prayag, and now he's just been to Vrindavan. He's completely immersed in love of Godhead and in Sankirtan, performing Sankirtan everywhere, completely like a madman, just distributing love of Godhead everywhere. And he's coming into the city of Prayag. Rupa and Anupam are there, and then Mahaprabhu is arriving. Prabhu, this is text number 30, 35, 36, 37, like that, of chapter 19. Madhulila Sri Chaitanya Charamrita. Prabhu Chalayachin Bindu Madhav Darshane Lokka Lokka Lok Aishe Prabhu Milone. Prabhu Chalayachin Bindu Madhav Darshane. He's heading to a Bindu Madhav Darshane, a beautiful Kṛṣṇa, a beautiful temple of Bindu Madhav, Radha Madhav. Small, beautiful deities. These are marble deities. Just on the banks of, not far on the banks of the Tribeni Prayag Ghat, where you take bath. Just you go Bindu Madhav, Mahaprabhu like that. Taking darshan of Bindu Madhav and then going for Ganga Snan, Mahaprabhu and Prayag, Ganga Snan and Sankirtan, visiting the temples of Bindu Madhav and Lord Shiva. This is Mahaprabhu's in complete love of Godhead. And subsequently, he will instruct Rūpa Gosvāmī there. It's such a special place. He remains there for 1 month and instructs Rūpa Gosvāmī. And all this happened at the special place. Now Mahaprabhu is arriving into this special scene. Now, what's particularly significant is that this particular moment, Srila Prabhupada, after writing the Srimad Bhagavatam in India, first canto, in Radha Damodar Temple, Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada wrote the first canto and published that himself in Vrindavan. Now in Juhu, you're so fortunate. You don't realize your good fortune. Those who are serving based in Mumbai, Juhu, you don't realize your good fortune. That's such a special temple, those deities. So important to Srila Prabhupada, and doing any seva for them, even attending the Mangal Arati, is so pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. And any seva you do there. And so Juhu is a special place. Prabhupada's rooms there, Prabhupada preached there. He empowered so many of his grand preachers. Tamal Kṛṣṇa Goswami Maharaj, so many leelas in Juhu. Everything about Guru Raj Maharaj, everything about Juhu is leela. So many leaders had association with Prabhupada. So many leaders will describe you, Gargamuni, Ramananda in Juhu. So many Prabhupada's rooms, so many leelas he performed. So Prabhupada's presence there is so strong. So there you'll find in his rooms one first canto that he personally published in Juhu. And that's so special. In Vrindavan also, Prabhupada's rooms, the first canto that he personally published. Perhaps he took with him, I don't know, 500 copies or maybe less on the trunks to Cochin and then on the Jaladuta, and he sold them in New York. So where did they go? Such collector's items. But some were sold in India, also in Melbourne, Mahaprabhu Mandir. I'm not sure where it came from, but one of Prabhupada's original Bhagavatams you'll find in Melbourne, Mahaprabhu Mandir, where I'm fortunate to join Krishna consciousness. Such a special piece of artifact, and I was able to see, it's something so special. Prabhupada has all the deities there. He lived there, such a special place. Worth going to Australia just to visit Prabhupada's Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir. What can I say? Such a special place. Prabhupada said it's Vrindavan. So it's not Melbourne. And the people of Melbourne have become blessed because Mahaprabhu was appeared here. I served in that temple for 12 years. I've mentioned them many times as special deities. So who would not visit such a place? Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir. So Gaurchandra established by Prabhupada there, and the first book that he published, one of the first, the Bhagavatams that he published in India, you'll find one in Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir. So upon coming to America, then Prabhupada began publishing again. He began publishing, the first book was Bhagavad Gita, that's Macmillan published. And Ishopanishad was published then also. And then Prabhupada began also Teachings of Lord Caitanya, and then Kṛṣṇa book, and then Nectar Devotion. These are the books before he began writing second canto. So just see how important was the Teachings of Lord Caitanya, the second book that Prabhupada began when it was published in 1968. Now, the bit where Prabhupada begins, it's a summary, he describes it as the summary of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Teachings of Lord Caitanya. But Prabhupada, he doesn't begin in the Adi Lila. He doesn't mention the Adi Lila. He doesn't even begin in the beginning of Madhya Lila in Teachings of Lord Caitanya. He doesn't even begin, chapter 19, but he doesn't even begin in the beginning of the chapter. It begins the Teachings of Lord Caitanya describing this very incident of Mahaprabhu arriving in Prayag and Rupa and Anupam seeing him from a distance, and then they're meeting in the next day. So that's what I'll begin reading from. Actually, that was just the introduction, and that's brought us to just about 5 minutes left or a little bit more. So I'm going to take questions, and then next week, next week you can read. Well, next week I think we'll go for, I'll tell you what verse we'll go up to. We'll start and so you can read in advance at the same time next week. 30, text 30, or I mean, you can begin at the whole beginning of 19th chapter. Until next week, we'll go up to probably yeah. There's a lot in this section. Probably text number 120. Or maybe more even. 120, yeah. 115, up to 115. I don't think we'll go further than that. So Madhya Lila, chapter 19, text, beginning of the chapter up to text 115, if you're interested, before next Sunday. So are there any questions? Any questions? There must be questions. How is it that there cannot be questions when I covered so many topics? There must be thoughts in your minds. I don't know why I don't get questions in this session. There should be. I don't know why there's no questions. I gave a similar session this morning to a group on the same topic, but not exactly, but similar. And that was for devotees in, what was that, Mangalore, South India. There's so many questions. Same topic, here, no questions. You're not thinking. Why no questions? I don't know. I don't know, you take the easy way out, just like to hear it, huh? Look, all deep thinkers here. Look, Giridhari Madhav, Hriday Jagya, Bangshini Shaki, all Jivamrita, all deep thinkers. Why are there no questions? You could ask questions on any topic, from all the way from Mahaprabhu, going Puri all the way to why he left Puri, all the way through Bengal, Shantipur, Ram Kelly, Varanasi, Davai, so many topics you could be questions on. Okay. So next week, same time, we'll be reading those verses now that we had a complete review. I think we missed a few weeks. And there's Harirashta. Of course, there's no hard and fast rules. No hard and fast rules here. I don't mind if there's no questions, but I'm surprised. I don't mind if there's no questions as far as I'm concerned. That's fine. Because sometimes questions are asked, but they're not so stimulating anyway, and it's like, oof. So I don't mind no questions, but I'm surprised that there was no questions last night on this topic. We covered so many topics. I thought, wow, there'll be questions on this for sure. But in any case, there's no hard and fast rules. So I'll be going through these sections, but occasionally I may go into something else. It depends on time I get for preparation. Yeah, fine. So whatever I get time on for preparation, then I like to do this session. So anyway, next week we'll definitely be doing this, and we've got a fair bit of work on this. We can go slowly through this Rupshika stuff. So yeah, we could even go into the nectar devotion. So we'll see you next week. Thank you, Prabhu.